The baby shower had been perfect. 37-year-old Monica sat in her old blue Honda, smiling as she thought about the afternoon she'd just had. Her friends and family had gathered at her sister's house, filling the living room with laughter, gifts, and the kind of joy that only comes when people truly care about each other. She touched her belly gently, feeling her baby move inside. 8 months pregnant, and she could hardly believe she was finally going to be a mom. The gift bags in her back seat were filled with tiny clothes, bottles, and all the things she'd need for her little one. Her best friend had surprised her with a beautiful handmade baby blanket, and her mother had given her the same wooden rocking chair that Monica herself had been rocked in as a baby. It had been the kind of day that makes you believe everything is going to work out just fine. But now, as she drove down the quiet highway toward home, something didn't feel right. The car had started making a weird grinding noise about 10 minutes ago. At first, she thought maybe it was just road noise, but the sound was getting louder. Then she noticed the temperature gauge on her dashboard creeping up toward the red zone. Monica's heart started beating faster. She wasn't exactly a car expert, but she knew enough to understand that an overheating engine was bad news. Really bad news. She pressed the gas pedal a little lighter, hoping that might help. But the needle on the temperature gauge kept climbing. The sky above was getting darker by the minute. What had started as a beautiful sunny day was turning into something that looked like a storm was coming. She could see thick gray clouds rolling in from the west, and the wind was picking up. The last thing she needed was to be stuck somewhere in the rain, especially this far along in her pregnancy. She was on the old highway that connected the small town where her sister lived to her own neighborhood about 20 miles away. This wasn't the main road that most people used anymore. Since they'd built the new interstate 5 years ago, hardly anyone drove this route except locals who knew it was sometimes faster than dealing with highway traffic. That meant fewer people around if she needed help. Monica reached for her phone to call her husband, but when she looked at the screen, her heart sank. No signal, of course. This stretch of road was notorious for bad cell phone reception. The mountains on both sides seemed to block everything, and the cell towers were too far away to reach. She'd complained about it before when she'd driven this way, but today it felt like more than just an annoyance. The grinding noise was getting worse, and now she could smell something burning. Not like fire exactly, but that hot metal smell that means something is very wrong under the hood. Steam started rising from the front of her car, thin wisps at first, then thicker clouds that made it hard to see through the windshield. She was approaching the old bridge that crossed the river. It was one of those steel bridges built back in the 1960s, narrow and not really designed for modern traffic. There were no streetlights on it, and the sides were just metal railings that didn't make you feel very safe, especially at night. During the day, you could see the water rushing below through the gaps in the bridge deck. At night, it was just darkness underneath. The car shuddered, and Monica knew she couldn't keep driving. The steam was so thick now that she could barely see, and the temperature gauge was buried in the red. She had to pull over, but there wasn't much space. The bridge had a narrow shoulder, maybe 3 feet wide at most. It wasn't meant for parking, just for emergencies. And this was definitely an emergency. She put on her hazard lights and carefully steered to the right, getting as close to the railing as she dared. The car came to a stop with one final shudder and a hissing sound that meant the engine was done for the night. Maybe done for good, considering the age of the car and how much repair work it had already needed over the years. Monica sat there for a moment, trying not to panic. She was alone, pregnant, and stuck on a bridge with no way to call for help. The storm clouds were moving in fast, and she could see lightning in the distance. Rain was starting to fall, just a few drops on the windshield at first, but she knew it was going to get worse. Cars were still passing by, their headlights cutting through the growing darkness. She hoped someone would stop to help, but car after car went by without even slowing down. She couldn't really blame them. It was getting dark, the weather was turning bad, and stopping on a narrow bridge wasn't exactly safe for anyone. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming on the roof of her car. She could hear the wind picking up, making the bridge vibrate slightly under the weight of passing traffic. Each time a truck went by, her car shook a little, reminding her just how precarious her situation was. Then she felt it, a tightening in her belly that made her catch her breath. She'd been having these on and off for the past few weeks, and her doctor had told her they were practice contractions. Braxton Hicks, they called them. Normal for this stage of pregnancy, nothing to worry about. But sitting here alone in a broken-down car on a dark bridge, even normal things felt scary. Another contraction came, stronger this time. Monica tried to breathe through it the way they'd taught her in the pregnancy classes, but it was hard to stay calm when everything else was going wrong. What if these weren't practice contractions? What if the stress of the situation was causing real labor to start? She still had 4 weeks to go before her due date. The rain was really coming down now, turning the world outside her windows into a blur of water and darkness. The temperature inside the car was starting to drop, and she realized she was going to get cold fast once the engine heat completely disappeared. She had a sweater in the back seat, but it wasn't much, and the thought of spending hours out here was terrifying. She tried her phone again, holding it up in different positions, hoping to catch even one bar of signal. Nothing. It was like being completely cut off from the world. Her husband would be expecting her home soon, but he wouldn't start worrying for at least another hour. And even when he did worry, how would he know where to look for her? Monica closed her eyes and tried to think positive thoughts. Someone would stop to help. Someone had to. She just needed to wait it out, stay calm, and everything would be fine. The baby moved inside her, a reassuring flutter that reminded her she wasn't completely alone. But as the rain pounded harder and the minutes ticked by, she couldn't shake the feeling that this night was going to test her in ways she'd never imagined. Monica had been sitting in her car for almost an hour when she first heard the sound. At first she thought it might be thunder from the storm, but this was different. It was a deep, rhythmic rumbling that seemed to grow louder and louder. Then she realized what it was. Motorcycles, a lot of them. Her first reaction was fear. She'd grown up hearing stories about biker gangs and the trouble they could cause. Movies and TV shows had painted a picture in her mind of dangerous men on motorcycles who were best avoided, especially if you were a woman alone. And here she was, pregnant and helpless, about to encounter exactly the kind of situation her mother had always warned her about. The sound grew closer, and she could see headlights approaching through the rain. Not just one or two, but a whole line of them. The rumbling was so loud now that it seemed to vibrate through her entire body. She watched in her rearview mirror as the motorcycles came into view, their lights cutting through the darkness like a parade of dragons. There were at least a dozen of them, maybe more. Big bikes with riders dressed in black leather, looking exactly like something out of a movie. Monica's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She locked her doors, even though she knew it probably wouldn't matter if they really wanted to cause trouble. The motorcycles began to slow down as they approached her car. Monica held her breath, not sure what to expect. Were they going to stop? Were they just going to ride past like all the other vehicles had been doing? Part of her hoped they would just keep going, but another part of her desperately needed help, no matter who it came from. The lead motorcycle pulled up behind her car and stopped. Then another one and another. Within minutes, her broken-down Honda was surrounded by motorcycles, their engines still running, headlights creating an almost theatrical scene in the rain and darkness. The riders were getting off their bikes now, and Monica could see them more clearly. They were exactly what she'd expected, and nothing like what she'd expected at the same time. Yes, they wore leather jackets and had tattoos on their arms. Yes, they looked tough and intimidating. But there was something about the way they moved, the way they approached her car, that didn't feel threatening. It felt protective. The rider from the lead motorcycle walked up to her driver's side window. He was a big man, probably in his 50s, with gray hair peeking out from under his helmet. His leather jacket was worn and weathered, covered with patches and pins that told stories Monica couldn't read. He had tattoos covering both arms, but when he got close enough for her to see his face clearly, she was surprised by what she saw. He had kind eyes, the sort of eyes that belonged to someone's grandfather, not a dangerous criminal. When he tapped gently on her window, his expression was one of genuine concern, not menace. Monica hesitated for a moment, then cracked the window just enough to hear what he had to say. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "Looks like you're having some car trouble. You okay in there?" The simple kindness in his voice caught her off guard. She'd been prepared for demands or threats, not a polite inquiry about her well-being. She found herself relaxing just a little bit. "My car overheated," she managed to say. "The engine just died and I can't get any cell phone signal to call for help." The man nodded as if he'd expected as much. "That's a tough spot to be in, especially in this weather." "How far along are you?" It took her a moment to realize he was asking about her pregnancy. 8 months, she said. Well, that settles it then, he said, turning to wave at the other riders. We're definitely not leaving you out here alone. What happened next was like watching a well-orchestrated dance. The bikers began moving around her car with purpose, but without any of the chaos or aggression she'd feared. 2 of them walked to the front of her car and popped the hood, peering at the engine with the confidence of people who knew what they were looking at. Others began positioning their motorcycles in a specific pattern around her car. Monica realized they were creating a barrier. The motorcycles were being arranged so that passing traffic could clearly see there was a situation happening, but also so that she and her car were protected from the wind and rain. The bikers had turned themselves into a human and machine shield, and they'd done it without her even asking. One of the women riders approached her window. She was probably in her 40s with short blonde hair and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen 1,000 miles of road. Like the others, she had tattoos, but she also had a warm smile that immediately put Monica at ease. "Hi, honey," the woman said. "I'm a nurse, or I was before I retired. Mind if I check on you and make sure everything's okay? Being pregnant and stressed out in a situation like this can't be easy." Monica found herself nodding and unlocking her car doors. Something about these people felt safe, despite everything she'd been taught to expect. The nurse climbed into the passenger seat, her leather jacket creaking softly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" the woman asked. "Monica?" she replied. "Well, Monica, I'm Beth. And that big guy who talked to you first, that's Tommy. He might look scary, but he's actually a teddy bear. Has 4 grandkids and drives a school bus when he's not riding his bike." Monica couldn't help but smile at that. A school bus driver. Somehow that detail made everything feel less frightening. Beth pulled a small flashlight from her jacket and asked permission to check Monica's pulse and blood pressure. She had a small medical kit with her, the kind of thing you might find in an ambulance. As she worked, she kept up a steady stream of gentle conversation, asking about the baby, about Monica's pregnancy, about whether she'd been having any contractions. Meanwhile, the men were working on her car. Monica could hear them talking about radiators and coolant systems, their voices carrying the confidence of people who'd dealt with broken-down vehicles before. Every few minutes, one of them would come to her window to give her an update. "Your radiator's blown," Tommy reported after about 10 minutes. "But the good news is that's the only thing wrong with the engine. Everything else looks fine. You just need a new radiator and some coolant and you'll be good as new." Monica felt a wave of relief. At least it wasn't a complete disaster. But then reality set in. A new radiator would cost money she didn't have, especially this close to the baby being born. She and her husband had been saving every penny for the upcoming medical bills and time off work. Tommy seemed to read her expression. "Don't worry about that right now," he said. "Let's just focus on getting you somewhere safe and warm. We'll figure out the rest later." As if on cue, another motorcycle pulled up to join the group. This rider was younger, maybe in his 30s, and he hopped off his bike with the energy of someone who was excited to help. "Got your message on the radio," he called out to Tommy. "My brother's tow truck is about 15 minutes away. He'll get the car off the bridge and somewhere safe." Monica blinked in surprise. They'd called for a tow truck? When had that happened? She hadn't heard anyone make a phone call, but then she realized they must have radios in their helmets or on their bikes. These people were more organized than she'd given them credit for. The rain was still coming down, but Monica found herself feeling warmer and safer than she had all evening. These strangers, these bikers who looked like they'd stepped out of her worst fears, had surrounded her with kindness and competence. They'd taken her emergency and made it their own, and they were handling it with the kind of teamwork that spoke of years of friendship and trust. For the first time since her car had broken down, Monica began to believe that everything was going to be okay. The tow truck arrived exactly when they said it would. Monica watched through her rain-streaked windshield as a red pickup truck with a towing rig pulled up behind the line of motorcycles. The driver who got out looked just like the bikers, wearing the same kind of leather jacket and boots, and she realized this wasn't just some random tow truck driver Tommy had called. This was family. "That's my little brother Danny," Tommy explained when he saw Monica looking. "He owns a garage about 20 miles from here. Best mechanic in 3 counties, and he's honest, which is more than you can say for most of them." Danny walked over to Monica's car with the same easy confidence his brother had shown. He was younger than Tommy, probably in his early 40s, with hands that were permanently stained with motor oil and a smile that made Monica think of her own brother back home. "Don't worry about a thing," Danny said when Tommy introduced him. "We'll get your car to my shop and I'll take a proper look at it in the morning when I can see what I'm doing. Right now, the important thing is getting you somewhere warm and dry." Monica felt tears starting to form in her eyes. These people didn't know her, had no reason to care about her problems, but they were treating her like family. "I should probably mention," she said quietly, "I don't have a lot of money for repairs right now. With the baby coming and all." Danny waved his hand like money was the last thing on his mind. "Let's worry about fixing the car first. We'll figure out the rest later. Besides, radiators aren't that expensive, especially for an older Honda like this. I probably have a used one sitting in my yard that'll work just fine." While Danny worked on getting her car hooked up to his truck, the other bikers continued to form their protective circle around the scene. Monica noticed that they'd positioned themselves so that passing cars had to slow down and move over, creating a much safer environment for everyone working. It was like they'd done this kind of thing before. Beth, the retired nurse, stayed in the passenger seat with Monica, keeping her calm and monitoring her condition. "Have you been having any more contractions?" she asked. "A few," Monica admitted, "but they don't feel like the real thing." "Just stress, I think," Beth nodded. "Probably, but let's keep an eye on it. Stress can sometimes trigger early labor, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen." "How far is your hospital from here?" "About 30 miles, Monica said. In the opposite direction from where I was heading home." "Good to know," Beth said, making a mental note. "Just in case we need that information later." Monica found herself wondering about these people. They clearly weren't the dangerous gang members she'd expected. They were organized, helpful, and seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. "Can I ask," she said to Beth, "what kind of motorcycle club you all belong to?" Beth smiled. "We're called the Road Angels. We're not really a traditional motorcycle club in the way most people think of them. We're more like a community service organization that happens to ride motorcycles. We do charity rides, help out at community events, and, well, stuff like this. When someone's in trouble on the road, we stop and help." That explained so much. Monica had heard of groups like this but had never encountered one before. "How did you all find me?" "Tommy heard your car backfiring when we were about a mile behind you," Beth explained. "Then we saw the steam and your hazard lights. We were already on our way back from a charity ride we did today, raising money for the children's hospital. When we saw you were in trouble, especially being pregnant, there was no question about stopping." Monica shook her head in amazement. "I've been sitting here for an hour, and dozens of cars passed by without stopping. You're the first people who cared enough to help." "That's the problem with the world today," Beth said sadly. "Everyone's so worried about their own problems, they forget we're all in this together. But that's exactly why groups like ours exist. Someone has to be willing to stop and help." Danny finished hooking up Monica's car and walked over to her window. "All set," he said. "I'm going to take this to my shop and get it inside where it'll be dry. Tommy says you need a ride somewhere." "Where were you heading?" Monica gave him her address and he nodded. "That's not far from the shop. Tell you what, since you're going to need a way to get around while I work on your car, why don't I loan you one of my courtesy cars? I've got an old Toyota that runs great. Nothing fancy, but it's reliable and safe." Monica stared at him. "You'd loan me a car?" "You don't even know me," Danny shrugged. "Tommy vouches for you, and that's good enough for me. Besides, you're about to have a baby. Last thing you need is to be stuck without transportation." The generosity was overwhelming. Monica had started this evening expecting the worst, and instead she was experiencing the kind of kindness she'd only heard about in stories. "I don't know how to thank you all," she said. "Thank us by paying it forward someday," Tommy said. "When you see someone else in trouble, remember how this felt and stop to help if you can." Two of the other bikers approached the car. Monica had noticed them earlier because they were clearly a couple, probably in their 30s, who rode matching motorcycles and seemed to coordinate their movements without even speaking to each other. "Hi," the woman said. "I'm Lisa, and this is my husband, Mike. We were wondering, do you have someone who can drive you home tonight? Because if you need a ride, we'd be happy to follow you to make sure you get there safely." Monica thought about it. Her husband would be worried by now, probably wondering where she was. She needed to get home, but she also felt strangely reluctant to leave these people who had shown her such kindness. "Actually," she said, "could someone drive me to the hospital first? I'd feel better if a doctor checked on the baby after all this stress." "I know it's probably fine, but—" "Of course," Beth said immediately. "I was going to suggest the same thing." Mike and Lisa can follow us there, and then one of them can drive you home afterward while the other rides their bikes back. Monica couldn't believe how naturally these people rearranged their evening plans to accommodate her needs. It was like they'd adopted her into their family without a second thought. As Danny's tow truck pulled away with her car, Monica found herself sitting in the passenger seat of Mike's pickup truck, with Lisa following behind on both motorcycles. Beth had decided to ride with them to the hospital, just to make sure everything was okay. The storm was finally starting to clear, and through the clouds, Monica could see stars beginning to appear. The whole experience felt almost dreamlike. A few hours ago she'd been stranded and afraid. Now she was surrounded by guardian angels who happened to ride motorcycles. You know, Mike said as they drove toward the hospital, this kind of thing is exactly why we do what we do. Everyone deserves to have someone show up when they're in trouble. Monica nodded, touching her belly gently. I'm going to tell my baby about this someday. About the night Mom got stuck on a bridge and the angels showed up on motorcycles. Mike smiled. I like that. Angels on motorcycles. Tommy's going to love that description. At the hospital, Beth stayed with Monica through the entire checkup, translating medical terms and making sure she understood everything the doctor was telling her. The baby was fine. The contractions had been stress-related and had stopped, and Monica was cleared to go home with instructions to rest and take it easy. When they were ready to leave, Monica found the whole group of bikers waiting in the hospital parking lot. They'd followed to make sure everything was okay, even though no one had asked them to. Everything good? Tommy asked. Perfect, Monica said. The baby's fine, I'm fine. Thanks to all of you. As Lisa drove her home, Monica realized that this night had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She'd learned something important about judging people by their appearance, about the kindness of strangers, and about how much good can happen when people choose to care for each other. But she had no idea that her story with the road angels was just beginning. Monica's husband, David, was pacing the front porch when Lisa's truck pulled into their driveway. He'd been calling Monica's phone for hours, getting more worried by the minute when she didn't answer. The relief on his face when he saw her getting out of the truck was something Monica would never forget. Thank God you're okay, he said, wrapping her in his arms. I was about to call the police. What happened? Whose truck is this? Monica introduced Lisa and explained the whole story, watching David's expression change from confusion to amazement to gratitude. By the time she finished, he was shaking Lisa's hand like she'd saved his wife's life, which in a way, she had. I don't know how to thank you, David told Lisa. You have no idea how much this means to us. Lisa smiled. Just take good care of her and that baby. That's all the thanks we need. After Lisa left, Monica and David sat up talking until almost midnight. David couldn't get over the story. Like Monica, he'd grown up with preconceived notions about motorcycle gangs, and this experience was turning those ideas upside down. I keep thinking about what might have happened if they hadn't come along, David said. You could have been stuck out there all night in that storm. Monica shuddered at the thought. The contractions probably would have gotten worse from the stress. I might have ended up in real labor, stuck on a bridge with no way to get help. The next morning, Monica woke up feeling rested for the first time in weeks. The stress of the previous night had given way to a deep sense of gratitude and peace. She made breakfast for David before he left for work, then settled in to call her insurance company about the car. Around 10 o'clock, her phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but she answered anyway. Monica, this is Danny from Danny's garage. I've got some good news about your car. Monica's heart lifted. You've already looked at it? Been working on it since 7 this morning, Danny said. Like I thought, you just need a new radiator. I've got a good used one that'll work perfectly, and I can have it installed by this afternoon. The whole job will run you about $200. Monica felt a wave of relief. $200 was still more than they had budgeted for car repairs, but it was manageable. That's wonderful. When can I come pick it up? Well, that's the thing, Danny said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. You don't owe me anything. It's all taken care of. Monica was confused. What do you mean, taken care of? Tommy and the rest of the road angels took up a collection last night after they dropped you off. They covered the whole repair bill. Plus, I'm throwing in a full tune-up and oil change at no charge. Your car's going to run better than it has in years. Monica felt tears starting to form. I can't let you do that. You've all done so much already. Too late, Danny said cheerfully. It's already done. Besides, Tommy said something about you being family now and we take care of family. When Monica hung up the phone, she was crying so hard she could barely see. The kindness these strangers had shown her was beyond anything she'd ever experienced. She called David at work to tell him the news, and he was just as emotional as she was. "I'm going to write them a thank you note," Monica said. "No, I'm going to write thank you notes to all of them." "This is incredible." But before she could even start writing, her phone rang again. This time it was Tommy. "Monica, I hope you don't mind, but I shared your story with some of the other motorcycle clubs in the area. Word kinda got around about what happened last night." "That's fine," Monica said, though she wasn't sure why he was calling to tell her that. "Well, the thing is, a bunch of people want to help. Not just bikers, but regular folks too. Danny's garage has become kind of a collection point and, well, you might want to come down here and see for yourself." Monica was puzzled, but she agreed to drive down to the garage that afternoon to pick up her car. David insisted on coming with her, taking time off work because he wanted to meet the people who had helped his wife. When they arrived at Danny's garage, Monica couldn't believe what she saw. The parking lot was full of motorcycles, but also regular cars and pickup trucks. There were people everywhere, and they all seemed to be carrying things into the garage. Tommy spotted them and walked over with a huge grin on his face. "You made it! Come on, you need to see this." He led them into the garage where Monica's Honda was sitting with its hood up, looking better than it had in years. But that wasn't what made her gasp. The entire garage was filled with baby supplies. Car seats, cribs, high chairs, boxes of diapers, clothes, toys, blankets, bottles, and more baby gear than Monica had ever seen in one place. "What is all this?" Monica whispered. Beth appeared at her elbow, wearing a huge smile. "This is what happens when word gets out about good people who need help." Tommy told the story to a few friends, they told a few friends, and well, it snowballed. Danny walked over, wiping his hands on a shop rag. The local radio station heard about it and mentioned it on the air this morning. Then the newspaper called, and before we knew it, people were showing up with donations. "We've got enough baby stuff here to supply a nursery store." Monica looked around in amazement. There were people she'd never seen before, carefully organizing donations and putting together what looked like a complete baby's room. Some were bikers from other clubs, but many were just regular community members who had heard the story and wanted to help. A woman in her 60s approached them, carrying a beautifully wrapped package. "Are you Monica? I heard about what happened to you last night. I wanted to bring you this." She handed Monica the package. "I made it myself. It's a baby quilt. I hope you like it." Monica unwrapped the package with shaking hands. Inside was the most beautiful handmade quilt she'd ever seen, covered in tiny stars and moons and soft blues and yellows. "It's gorgeous," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you so much." "I heard you don't know if you're having a boy or girl," the woman said. "So I made it neutral colors. And look here." She pointed to one corner of the quilt, where she'd embroidered tiny motorcycles among the stars. "I thought you might like that touch, given how you met your guardian angels." David was walking around the garage in amazement, shaking hands with person after person, each one wanting to share why they'd decided to help. A group of women from a local church had organized a complete layette. The firefighters from the nearby station had brought a top-of-the-line car seat. Even the local grocery store manager was there with gift cards for baby formula and food. Tommy appeared at Monica's side holding an envelope. "There's one more thing," he said. "People wanted to do more than just donate baby supplies. This is from everyone who contributed." Monica opened the envelope and found it filled with gift cards to grocery stores, gas stations, and restaurants, along with a bank deposit slip showing that money had been deposited directly into an account set up in her name. "How much is this?" she asked, looking at the deposit slip. "Enough to cover all your expenses for the first few months after the baby comes," Tommy said. "Maybe longer depending on how carefully you budget it." People wanted to make sure you and David could focus on being new parents without worrying about money. Monica looked around at all the faces surrounding her. Bikers and farmers and teachers and shopkeepers, all united in their desire to help a stranger who had found herself in trouble. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would all of you do this for someone you don't even know?" An older man wearing a veteran's hat stepped forward. "Because you were alone and scared and needed help, and that could be any one of us someday. Because Tommy and his friends showed us what real community looks like. And because sometimes the world gives us a chance to be part of something good, and we need to take it." Beth put her arm around Monica's shoulders. Plus, we all fell in love with the idea of angels on motorcycles. That's what you called us last night, remember? Angels on motorcycles. We kind of like that reputation. As Monica and David loaded their car with more baby supplies than they could have afforded in a lifetime, Monica realized that what had started as the worst night of her pregnancy had turned into something magical. She'd learned that guardian angels really do exist, and sometimes they show up when you least expect them, wearing leather jackets and riding motorcycles. But the biggest lesson was still to come. 3 weeks later, Monica was folding tiny baby clothes in the nursery when her phone rang. She'd been getting calls all week from friends and family who had heard about her experience, but this number was familiar now. It was Tommy. "Monica, I hope I'm not bothering you," he said. "I wanted to check on you and see how you're feeling. That little one could decide to show up any day now." Monica smiled, touching her belly. "I'm feeling great, actually. Really ready to meet this baby. And Tommy, I can't thank you enough for everything you and everyone else did. This nursery looks like something out of a magazine because of all the donations. That's wonderful to hear. Listen, I'm calling because I wanted to ask you something. The local newspaper wants to do a feature story about what happened. They think it might inspire other people to help their neighbors. Would you be okay with that?" Monica didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. If our story can encourage other people to stop and help when they see someone in trouble, then I'm all for it." The newspaper article came out the following Sunday, with a photo of Monica standing next to her car in Danny's garage, surrounded by Tommy and several other road angels. The headline read, "Angels on Motorcycles: How Strangers Became Family." The story spread quickly through social media, and soon Monica was getting calls from radio stations and even a few television shows. But the real impact started showing up in smaller ways. Danny called to tell her that 3 different people had stopped by his garage that week to help strangers with car trouble, saying they'd been inspired by Monica's story. The local homeless shelter reported a sudden increase in donations, with people specifically mentioning that they wanted to pay it forward after reading about the road angels. Beth stopped by Monica's house one afternoon with exciting news. "You're not going to believe this," she said, settling into the rocking chair in the nursery. "Our motorcycle club has gotten 12 new members this week. All people who heard your story and wanted to be part of something that helps others." Monica was amazed. "Really? 12 new members?" "Really? And 3 other towns have started their own Road Angels chapters. People want to be part of the solution instead of just driving by when they see someone in trouble." 2 days before Monica's due date, her labor started in the middle of the night. David drove her to the hospital, and when they arrived, they found an unexpected surprise in the parking lot. Tommy's motorcycle was there along with 3 others. "What are you doing here?" Monica asked when she saw Tommy in the waiting room. Tommy looked slightly embarrassed. "Well, you told Beth your due date, and we've kind of been taking turns keeping an eye on the hospital parking lot. We wanted to make sure you had support when the baby came." David shook his head in amazement. "You've been watching the hospital for us?" "It's what family does," said Lisa, who was also there with Mike. "Besides, we want to meet this little angel who's going to grow up knowing that sometimes help comes on 2 wheels. Monica's labor progressed smoothly, and 8 hours later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. When the nurse asked what name they'd chosen, Monica looked at David and smiled. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope Angela." The middle name was for the angels who had saved them that night on the bridge. When visiting hours started, Monica's hospital room filled with flowers and balloons from the road angels and all the people who had helped with donations. Tommy brought a tiny leather jacket that said, "Future Road Angel" on the back, and Beth presented them with a savings account book showing that the motorcycle club had started a college fund for Hope. But the moment that meant the most to Monica came when Danny appeared in the doorway, holding a small wooden box. "This is from all of us," he said, handing her the box. "Open it when you get home." That evening, when they were finally settled at home with baby Hope, Monica opened Danny's gift. Inside was a beautiful silver bracelet with small charms hanging from it. Each charm represented something from that night: a tiny motorcycle, a bridge, a star for hope, and a small angel. There was also a note. "Monica," the note read, "this bracelet tells the story of the night we all became family. Wear it to remember that you're never alone and that angels come in all forms. But most importantly, remember that you became an angel yourself that night, showing all of us what courage and grace look like in the face of fear." Thank you for letting us be part of your story. Love, your Road Angels family. Monica put the bracelet on and never took it off. Over the years that followed, she wore it as a reminder of what she'd learned that stormy night on the bridge. She volunteered at the local women's shelter, helped organize charity drives, and always stopped when she saw someone in trouble on the road. When Hope turned 5, Monica took her to the annual Road Angels charity ride for the Children's Hospital. Hope wore her tiny leather jacket and rode on the back of Tommy's motorcycle in the parade, waving at crowds who cheered for the little girl who had become a symbol of hope and community kindness. "Tell me the story again." "Mama," Hope said that night as Monica tucked her into bed, "about the night you met the angels." Monica smiled and began the story the same way she always did. "Once upon a time, your mama's car broke down on a dark bridge during a storm. She was scared and alone, and she didn't know what was going to happen. But then she heard the sound of motorcycles." As she told the story, Monica looked down at the silver bracelet on her wrist, each charm catching the light from Hope's nightlight. The little motorcycle charm reminded her that help can come from the most unexpected places. The bridge charm reminded her that sometimes our worst moments lead to our greatest blessings. The star reminded her to always have hope, even in the darkest times. And the angel charm reminded her of the most important lesson of all, that ordinary people can choose to be angels for each other, and that a single act of kindness can ripple outward in ways we never imagine. The Road Angels continued their work, growing from one small chapter to dozens of chapters across the country. They rescued stranded motorists, raised money for charity, and proved every day that the world is full of good people willing to help when someone needs it most. And whenever someone asked Tommy what inspired him to start helping strangers, he would smile and tell them about a pregnant woman named Monica, who taught him that sometimes the people we help end up helping us even more. He would tell them about the night that changed everything, when a broken-down car on a bridge became the beginning of a movement that reminded everyone that we're all in this together. Monica's story became more than just a feel-good news article. It became a reminder that in a world that often feels divided and scary, there are still people who will stop what they're doing to help a stranger. It proved that kindness is contagious, that courage can be found in the most unexpected moments, and that sometimes our guardian angels wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles. Years later, when people asked Monica what she learned from that night on the bridge, she would touch her silver bracelet and say, "I learned that being rescued isn't just about being saved from a bad situation. Sometimes being rescued means discovering that the world is full of more love and kindness than you ever dared to hope for." And she was right.